Stephen, we've been talking about President Hollande's trip to San Francisco in the news. He used the opportunity to unveil some new measures to encourage startups here in France.
Yeah, as you were saying, he was meeting with those big tech business leaders in San Francisco. There are in fact some 60,000 French nationals that live in California. Many of them work in tech startups. Francois Hollande met a group of those yesterday while in California. He used the opportunity to unveil a raft of measures aimed at encouraging new startups in France. The aim is to try and stop the sort of brain drain of people to places like the United States from this country. Now, these include a push for greater use of crowdfunding, a method used in the United States and elsewhere to fund new ventures. He also wants French companies to make future job offers to students who are finishing their studies to allow them time to develop their own projects with the job security of having a job offer there waiting for them. And he also proposed the idea of so-called talent passports. These would be a special kind of visas to encourage foreign entrepreneurs to come to France to set up their businesses here, in the hope, of course, that those things will all create jobs.
Right, well, so talking about that, let's talk about how to do business here in France. A new ruling is affecting the thorny issue of Sunday opening for shops.
Yes, here in France, only certain shops are allowed to open on Sundays and under very strict conditions. Last December, the government issued an executive order to add the exception of hardware stores to this rule, so they would be allowed to open on Sunday. This after a long campaign by workers and by bosses. But the France's Council of State struck down that order in a ruling on Wednesday, meaning those shops will have to remain closed this Sunday. Josh Vardy has more.
Temporary legislation that's caused a headache and lost DIY shop employees the possibility to work for extra pay. France's highest administrative court has overturned a decree announced in December allowing DIY shops to stay open on Sundays.
We're completely stunned by what's been decided. Employees of Bricorama have been fighting for months to get a measure of fairness over working on Sundays. The government started out on a constructive process, but now we're back to zero.
Employees willing to work the extra hours say they're disappointed.
I lose around 500 euros a month when we don't work on Sundays. That's a significant amount.
The decree was overturned after unions complained. They said such temporary legislation broke employment rules and should be made permanent.
The decision is a victory for us, because the fact that the state can make an illegal decree seems to us to be an anachronism.
The French government say the decree was introduced to allow time for legislation over Sunday working hours to be finalised.
We thought that the decree could allow us to wait for the proper law. We should now probably do it a bit faster.
Meanwhile, the government says it's working on a new decree, this time without a time limit.
Let's have a look now what's happening on the markets. And over in Asia, the rising value of the yen has hit the Nikkei in Tokyo. It's down 1.8% in trading today. A generally negative picture across the Asian markets, in fact, as investors take profits after the gains we saw in recent days. Over in Sydney, the S&P ASX 200 is in the red. This after new figures in January showing the unemployment rate hit a 10-year high of 6%. The second consecutive month we've seen the number of people out of work in Australia go up. Another warning sign there about the Australian economy.
All right, Stephen, there's plenty of companies news around today, so take us through the highlights.
We'll start with the cable company Comcast, which has agreed a deal to buy its rival Time Warner Cable for $45 billion worth of shares. Sources close to the company say the deal has been finalised at a price 17% higher than Time Warner's closing share price on Wednesday. It trumps a previous offer from Charter Communications to buy the business for $38 billion. And France's biggest bank, BNP Paribas, has reported net profits of 4.8 billion euros for 2013, but far below expectations. In the last 3 months of last year, the company saw pre-tax profits fall by a third to 766 million euros. The bank set aside 1.1 billion to cover the hit to its business from sanctions imposed by the US against several countries, including Iran. The full year revenues of the bank fell slightly in what it's described as a lacklustre economic environment in Europe.
And that was Stephen Carroll with all of the France 24's latest business news. Thank you very much.